Today, we are diving into one of the most influential business books of all time, Good to Great. For 5 years, researcher Jim Collins and his team got totally obsessed with one massive, fascinating question. Right? This was the question that drove them. They literally sifted through thousands of companies to find just 11. 11 that made it a sustained leap from just average stock returns to being truly exceptional, absolutely crushing the market. So what was their secret? What was going on inside that black box that separated them from their competitors who just never made the jump? And this quote, well, it gets right to the heart of it. You see, it's pretty easy to be good. It's comfortable, right? It pays the bills. But greatness, that doesn't just happen by accident. It's a choice. It's a conscious decision to push past that comfortable, safe place of good enough. So to understand how they did it, we're going to follow their roadmap. We'll start with the big core idea that ties everything together, the flywheel. Then we'll look at the 3 huge stages of building momentum: disciplined people, disciplined thought, and disciplined action. And finally, we'll see how it all pays off. Let's get started with that flywheel. The first thing the researchers noticed was what didn't happen. There was no single aha moment, no big launch program, no dramatic revolution. From the outside, the transformation often looked really sudden. But from the inside, it was a slow, deliberate process, kind of like trying to turn a giant, heavy flywheel. Just picture this for a second. You're trying to push a massive 5,000-pound metal disc. Your first push, it barely moves. You keep pushing, again and again, consistently, always in the same direction. For a long, long time, it feels like nothing is happening. But then you feel a little shift. The wheel completes 1 full turn, then 2, then 10. It's building momentum until, bam, breakthrough. The wheel's own weight starts working for you, flying forward with what feels like unstoppable force. That is the essence of the journey from good to great. So, what are those consistent pushes on the flywheel? Well, the research found they fall into 3 clear categories that build on each other. And you might be surprised where it all starts. It starts with people. Yeah, this is so counterintuitive. The good to great companies didn't start with a new vision or a brilliant strategy. Nope. They started by getting the right people in the key seats. And that begins right at the very top. The study found a very specific kind of leader at the helm of every single one of these companies, and it was not the flashy celebrity CEO you see on magazine covers. They were level 5 leaders. And these leaders are this amazing mix of intense professional will on one hand and deep personal humility on the other. When things went well, they'd look out the window to give credit to the team. But when things went poorly, they looked right in the mirror to take full responsibility. Okay, so with that level 5 leader driving, the very next step was to get the right people on the bus and, just as importantly, get the wrong people off the bus. The great companies were absolutely rigorous about this. They just understood that if you start with who, you can adapt to anything the world throws at you. But if you've got the wrong people, it doesn't matter how great your strategy is, you're eventually going to fail. All right, once you've got that amazing team in place, they can start the really hard work of disciplined thought. And that means confronting reality, which, let me tell you, it requires a very specific and challenging mindset. This is the Stockdale paradox. It's named after Admiral Jim Stockdale, who survived for years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam. He noticed something fascinating. The prisoners who didn't make it, they were the optimists, the ones who kept saying, "We'll be out by Christmas," and then Christmas would come and go and they'd be crished. The survivors, he said, were the ones who accepted the brutal, awful reality of their situation while never losing faith that they would one day prevail. And you can see this paradox play out perfectly in the grocery business. Back in the 70s, both Kroger and A&P saw that the old-school grocery store model was dying. Kroger confronted that brutal fact head-on and started a decades-long systematic rebuild of its entire business. A&P, which was the industry giant at the time, basically buried its head in the sand. And the result? Kroger's stock outperformed A&P's by 80 times. See, confronting those brutal facts leads you to incredible clarity. And for these great companies, that clarity was distilled into something they called the Hedgehog Concept. It's found right at the intersection of these 3 simple circles. What are you passionate about? What can you be the absolute best in the world at? And what drives your economic engine? For example, Walgreens figured out its hedgehog was being the best, most convenient drugstores measured by profit per customer visit. That simple idea drove every single decision and just kept pushing their flywheel forward. So let's recap. You have disciplined people, you have disciplined thought, The final critical push on that flywheel comes from turning all that clarity into disciplined action. Now, this is not about some top-down authoritarian ruler, not at all. When you have disciplined people, you don't really need a rigid hierarchy. And when you have disciplined thought, you don't need a ton of bureaucracy. It's a culture of freedom and responsibility within a framework. Collins tells this great story about the world-class triathlete Dave Scott, who would literally rinse his cottage cheese to get rid of a little extra fat. Nobody made him do that. It was his own personal, intense commitment to excellence. That's a culture of discipline. Okay, so when you think about huge business transformations, your mind probably jumps straight to technology, right? But the research uncovered this stunningly counterintuitive fact, and it's all summed up in this one number. 80%, that is the percentage of good to great executives who did not rank technology as one of the top 5 factors in their company's transformation. Isn't that wild? They understood this crucial truth. Technology is an accelerator, not the primary cause of success. They first got their flywheel turning through all that discipline, and then they used technology to make it spin even faster. So what was the result of all this incredible, disciplined effort? Well, the numbers are just staggering. 15 years after their transition point, the good to great companies generated cumulative stock returns 15 times the general market. They absolutely blew away their direct competitors, who never managed to make that leap. Ultimately, what this all comes down to is that every organization is in one of 2 cycles. You are either building momentum on the flywheel, or you're trapped in its evil twin, the doom loop. The flywheel, as we've seen, is a process of build-up. It's calm, it's deliberate, it's relentless. Every single success builds on the last one, creating this unstoppable momentum. And the best part is, the team can actually feel it happening, and they get energized by seeing those tangible results. The comparison companies, though, they were stuck in the doom loop. They'd get disappointing results, and then they'd react without really understanding why. They'd launch a new program, or chase a new fad, or bring in a new leader, just lurching from one thing to the next without ever gaining traction. It's draining, it destroys morale, and it pretty much guarantees you'll stay good, or maybe even worse. And that brings us to the final, really challenging question. What the research found was that building the flywheel isn't necessarily harder than just languishing in the doom loop. In fact, the constant chaos of mediocrity is often way more exhausting. So if the results are so much better and the journey itself is actually more rewarding, why would anyone settle for just being good?